Introduce our first guest speaker today, Willie Whittlesey, General Manager of the Yuba Water Agency. Willie was appointed General Manager in July 2020, and in that role, he oversees all aspects of Yuba Water Agency's operations and management, including flood risk reduction, hydropower generation, energy cells, water rights, water supply, and more. Prior to joining Yuba Water in 2016, Willie spent 13 years with Pacific Gas and Electric's land and hydro generation departments and 6 years in private forest management. He's a registered professional forester in California. Under Willie's leadership, Yuba Water has become a leader in the state in accelerating the pace and scale of forest management and is undertaking efforts to protect the Yuba watershed from catastrophic fire through innovative partnerships, programs, and projects. As the agency behind the landmark Lower Yuba River Accord, Yuba Water and Metropolitan have been members in water supply reliability for nearly 15 years. Through this agreement, Yuba Water surface water is transferred to MWD and other agencies across the state in almost all water year types, after the water has benefited critical fisheries in the lower Yuba River. The Yuba Accord is widely considered a model for balancing competing interests in water management, allowing Yuba Water to maintain sustainable surface and groundwater supplies while contributing to fishery enhancement and statewide water supply reliability. Today, Willie is going to provide us with a bit of background on the Yuba Water Agency, the Yuba watershed, and their innovative work and partnership building efforts to protect forest health and ensure watershed resiliency. Later this spring, one of Metropolitan's Bay Delta Initiative's program managers, Jennifer Nevels, will be following up with a presentation to this committee on potential science partnerships in the watersheds, which are supporting the board's policy objective of promoting a sustainable Bay Delta within Metropolitan's One Water. Join me in welcoming Willie. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Nina. So, like Nina said, I'm Willie Whittlesey, General Manager of Yuba Water Agency. Good afternoon, and thanks for having me here. I'm happy to chat with you about some of the great things we're doing in the Yuba watershed, and also the Yuba River Accord a little bit. Okay, so what are we discussing today? So we're going to learn a little bit about Yuba Water Agency. Some of you may not know exactly where we are or what we do, and the need for forest management. Like, what the heck is a general manager of a water agency doing here talking about forest management, and why is a registered professional forester in California the general manager of a water agency? Our watershed resilience program, specifically the North Yuba Forest Partnership, was kind of the result of several years of this work. The Forest Resilience Bond with our partners Blue Forest Conservation and additional forest health efforts. So what are Yuba Water Agency's mission areas? We were created in 1959 for flood risk reduction and sustainable water supply. And I'll stop there and say one of the items Nina talked about that gets a lot of praise is the Lower Yuba River Accord. When we constructed our project in the 1960s, we knew that the reservoir that was being constructed for flood control would have a significant volume of water available, and probably more than we need in the local area in Yuba County. And therefore, we've been transferring water throughout the state for, since the 1980s, and Metropolitan has been a partner in that. And formally, the last 15 years, we've been partners in the Lower Yuba River Accord. And Nina went over the benefits of that, but we just want to point out that it is a model of collaboration in the state. We think it's a way forward in many aspects of water and resource management in California, and it can be looked to basically balance the competing interests of water and other resources in California. So thank you for being a partner in the Lower Yuba River Accord and such a valued collaborator. So in addition to flood risk reduction and sustainable water supply, we also have 400 megawatts of clean, carbon-free hydropower generation. We're important to this sustainability of the grid, the power grid. I'll give you an example. September 6th of last summer, we had a heat wave come through California, and we get calls directly from the Cal ISO basically saying, are you putting out as much generation as possible, and are you going to make sure that generation stays online? We provide enough power for 300,000 to 400,000 homes. And also, we do fisheries and habitat enhancement and recreation at our primary reservoir, New Bullards Bar. Okay, where are we? So for those of you that don't know where Yuba County is or Yuba Water Agency is, it's not Yuma. Arizona. I go to conferences and I say, I'm Willie from Yuba, and they say, oh, so you're from Arizona? Nope, I'm from Northern California, just north of Sacramento, about an hour north. Our office is in Marysville, and our project is about 45 minutes east of there, up in the North Yuba River drainage. And you can see our relation geographically to the State Water Project in Lake Oroville. We're just one watershed south of the Feather, and we coordinate operations, in particular during times of flood flows like 2017, and very likely this week we'll be getting together with DWR and coordinating at least releases from New Bullard's Bar, not necessarily from Oroville because there's still quite capacity available in Oroville. But we're seeing the inflows the last 10 days that kind of lead us to, hey, we're shifting from drought operations to flood operations. And for our watershed, it happens rather quickly. We're ever increasing in storage in New Bullard's Bar, and we'll very likely spill, if we do, we'll probably spill in about 8 to 10 days. Okay, so you saw our relation to the Feather and Oroville and where we are basically in the state. Here is kind of a little bit of a zoom in of our watershed itself. Primarily, we get our water from the North Yuba River, but we do get a little bit from the middle. Here you can see 2 diversion dams, Log Cabin and Our House. Those dams allow us to divert some water from the middle Yuba River and a little creek called Oregon Creek. About 20% of our water supply comes from those diversions. And then the rest comes from the North Yuba River, and that's where New Bullard's Bar Dam is located. It is on the main stem of the North Yuba River. Downstream of that, we have our big powerhouse, about 350 megawatts with 2 generating units at New Colgate Powerhouse. Downstream of there, which is downstream of an Army Corps dam, Englebright Dam and Reservoir, we have the Narrows 2 and Narrows 1 powerhouses, and that all leads to the lower Yuba River and to the Feather, and our office is in Marysville. I'll have to point out that New Bullard's Bar Dam is the 5th tallest dam in the United States. It was completed and filled in 1970. It's 645 feet tall. It's about a 1 million acre foot reservoir, so about the same as the Bureau's Folsom Reservoir. And it has 170,000 acre feet of dedicated flood storage that's managed by the Army Corps of Engineers. So back to the primary topic here, forest management or forest health or forest restoration, whatever you want to call it. We're looking for healthy forests. So how did we get here? Well, I like to say that we loved our forests to death. At the turn of the last century, we were really getting into how are we going to manage our forests. We created the National Forest System. And what did we do? We said, well, we love these forests. They're wonderful. Let's not let them burn. So we excluded fire for 120 years, and we thought it was great. And for 100 years, it was great. And you rarely experienced a catastrophic wildfire. But with a changing climate and with the density of vegetation in our forests, we're now seeing catastrophic wildfire or stand replacing wildfire or mega fires, whatever you want to call them. They're really the result of a changing climate and just, you could call it overstocked, too dense, too much vegetation per acre. But here it is in Yosemite Valley. On the left is a picture in 1899, and you can see the meadow kind of in the center of the picture. That's really what the Sierra Nevada forest looked like. It was sparse. It was managed by indigenous people, creating fire, and also lightning caused fire. And it was just a natural process. The natural thinning process was done by fire, and it wasn't wildfire. It wasn't fast-moving fire that burned every piece of vegetation per acre. It slowly crept around. It burned for months, and it was just a constant. And there you have on the right, and this is 1994, so this is 20-something years ago, a really dense stand, and that's probably what it looks like today. But that's just a shot of what most Sierra Nevada forests look like right now. They're just overstocked with vegetation. Okay, what's the relevance of this slide? So this is a couple years old. I've been using this slide. That's the North Complex fire on the top of the screen. That's the Feather River watershed. In about 3 weeks' time, about a little over 300,000 acres burned in the North Complex fire. Kind of the relevance here is that's only 4 miles away from the North Yuba River watershed. That's the watershed that I most worry about. Well, why am I showing this? Well, the reality is our watershed, the North Yuba watershed, is really in no different condition than the Feather River watershed just north of us. And the point here is, and I like to make to my board, is look, our forest can burn in a matter of 3 weeks' time, just like the North Complex burned. And so when I go to justify these investments in forest restoration, this is one of the slides I use. Like, this can happen fast. Our entire watershed could burn in 3 weeks, like happened here. So that's really what helps us justify our investments in forest management. Well, I'll also say, and that was 2020, and we all know in 2021 we had the Dixie fire that burned even more, and it was just adjacent to that North Yuba Complex fire. So while I thought that was a dramatic slide, it was made worse by the Dixie fire the following year. So what are the benefits of forest restoration? Well, I think they're pretty obvious. It reduces the risk of destructive wildfire. And I said earlier, naturally, 150 years ago, we didn't have what we call wildfire. We had fire that was much less intense. Forest restoration also protects our communities, our water supply, and our local economies, and it improves forest health and resilience. And I think primarily it's really a public safety effort. So, Yuba Water's Watershed Resilience Program, how did it start? It really started in 2018, and the primary goal is to reduce the risk of catastrophic wildfire, protect our communities, and safeguard our water supply. And we do that through collaboration. When I talk about safeguarding our water supply, what do I talk about? Well, primarily I'm talking about the quality and quantity of water. One, we manage a reservoir right in the middle of the Sierra Nevadas. And if we experienced a catastrophic wildfire, we would have serious inputs of sediment and debris primarily, and very likely toxins, although we aren't within an urbanized area, so it's more natural material that's burning, but of course we could receive toxins from these fires as well. And then you talk about quantity of water. Well, when you go back to that Yosemite slide and you think about the natural hydrologic cycle that is being prevented from operating, just due to that much more vegetation per acre, we're really preventing the natural hydrologic cycle from occurring just because there's more trees per acre, especially in marginal years or drought years. Who has the most senior water rights in the state of California? The forests do. They're the first ones that get the water, right? I mean, the water is snow and rain, it hits the soil. Well, who gets the first shot at taking that water up? The forest. When our forests are out of balance, so is our hydrologic cycle. So I talk about collaboration. The only way we're going to get this stuff done is to collaborate. Yuba Water Agency is a reservoir operator and a water manager. We don't own the land in the forest. We don't own the trees or vegetation in the forest, and we don't really have a direct interest in recreation or timber or whatever goes on in the forest, camping, but we do have an interest in the water supply. So we comprise one role in a collaboration of many, which takes the Forest Service and CAL FIRE and the tribes and others to get this stuff done. So collaboration is what's needed. It's the catalyst. Where are we at? I'm kind of going to tell you where we're at today and then kind of build on that and how we got here. So far we've committed $10 million, and we have that's Yuba Water Agency funds committed, and that combines with other funds to create $78 million in investment in the Yuba River watershed. We have 19 partners. We're working on 8 projects, and these aren't 8 projects where you say, okay, well, how are we going to get this done, and let's start with 8 projects. These are projects that just come at you, and we manage them opportunistically. This wasn't something that just was like built from, start to finish. It's just something that has just grown organically over time. We've treated 7,000 acres, which to some might sound like a lot, to others might sound like not much. The reality is we have about 300,000 acres upstream of our reservoir, New Bullard's Bar, so it's not a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it's something, and we've started with all the right partners and putting the right foot forward. So here we have the North Yuba Forest Partnership. This is kind of the result of a few different projects coming together and a handful of partners coming together in a meeting and basically saying, well, what do we need to do? And this is 2018. I was in a meeting with these partners you see on the screen, and I got to read them to give them credit. It's Yuba Water Agency, of course, the National Forest Foundation, the Tahoe National Forest, Sierra County, Nevada City Rancheria, our local tribe, Blue Forest Conservation, Camptonville Community Partnership, South Yuba River Citizens League, the Nature Conservancy, and the Nature Conservancy. So we were in a meeting, this was just after the 2017 fires and before the Camp Fire, basically looking each other in the eye going, what do we need to do? And everyone agreed, we need to think on a different pace and scale. We need to we need to think on the landscape scale or the watershed scale. And when we left that first meeting, we committed to treating the entire North Yuba forest, the North Yuba watershed, upstream of New Bullard's Bar, basically 275,000 acres. We agreed to restoring that forest over a 20-year time frame. We had to get real with the time frame, and we agreed that it would take 20 years to get that done. Well, how did that meeting start? We didn't all just come to that meeting and say, okay, let's get together and talk about forest management. Well, who should be there? Well, those 9 entities plus a few more. It was really a proof of concept that we worked on, and with the Forest Service and CAL FIRE, with Blue Forest Conservation. I have to give Blue Forest Conservation significant credit here. They were really the glue that brought it all together in 2018. They were the reason that we started, Yuba Water Agency started in the forest restoration space. They came to us in 2017 with an idea for the Forest Resilience Bond and a 15,000 acre project where we could prove that we could work together, and not just work together and see eye to eye, but work together legally and contractually and financially to invest, in this case, on Forest Service lands in our watershed in an effort to improve the pace and scale of the work. And the resulting product was a 15,000 acre proof of concept where 7,500 acres of that 15,000 are treated, and it's treated through a financial mechanism that we call the Forest Resilience Bond. Oh, I have to say this, we are now working on our second Forest Resilience Bond, and that will be 26,000 acres with a more significant investment from the partners. So it was successful, and we're moving to something even larger, and it's all part of the North Yuba Forest Partnership overall effort. So we have some additional, those are our primary projects. Is the Forest Service owns about 80% of the land upstream of our reservoir. So the bulk of the work that we need to do in our watershed, and not all watersheds are the same, is on national forest land, primarily the Tahoe National Forest. There's a little bit in the Plumas. So that's where we've been focusing our efforts. And when you think about landscape scale or watershed scale, we're working with the Forest Service. However, when you get lower in elevation in Yuba County, in particular in the Yuba watershed, you get to these rural, residential, small kind of ranchettes or small family timber operations, and that's where to have a really positive effect, you need to get even more partners. It's more difficult. You're not working on the thousands of acre kind of ownerships. You're working on the 10, 20, 40, 160 acre ownerships. So, and then also that's in state responsibility area. So that's kind of CAL FIRE jurisdiction outside of Forest Service jurisdiction. So it's a totally different venue that you're working in a different set of partners. But we've been successful in that space as well. We've got a $4.5 million Healthy Forest grant through CAL FIRE, and we're treating 5,400 acres, and I think we have 7 different local landowner partners, including the Plumas National Forest. So that's basically where we are in the forest restoration space. I'll say this, one of my most proud moments in all of this is when the Biden administration last spring awarded the North Yuba Forest Partnership $28 million in IIJA funds as part of their wildfire crisis strategy. We were one of 10 landscape scale projects in the Western United States that was chosen for this specific funding. That told me that we were moving in the right direction and doing the right thing. So, like I said, that's one of my most proud moments in all of this. Yes, I am a general manager of a water agency. No, I don't just hike around the forest all day and worry about, restoring the forest. We do other things, but happy to answer questions about anything Yuba Water Agency does, including forest restoration.
Thank you for that. Excuse me. Thank you for that really incredible presentation. Do any committee members have questions for our guest today?
We have Director Miller, Director Fessel, and Director Erdman with their hands up.
Okay. Director Miller, I see you first.
Have you had any problems up there in the trees with the beetles?
Yes, not as bad as Southern California or the southern part of the state. In periods of stress or periods of drought, that's where you experience in particular, the western pine beetle, and basically devastating effects in the southern Sierras. Little less so in the northern Sierra. One, because our drought impacts weren't as bad, and two, we have a little bit more of a mixed species forest. We definitely have forest that's 100% pine, but when you have a mixed species forest, it gives a little diversity to the forest, and you don't have the catastrophic kind of all the trees are dying from the beetle impacts.
Vice Chair Fessel.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mr. Whittlesey, thank you for coming down and joining us today. When I wore a younger man's clothes, I remember reading and seeing on television, then it may have been black and white, actually, some spectacular floods that were up in your area that I think led by the construction and the final construction of the dam that you're showing us here. But I remember that there were some, even in Southern California, there were some spectacular flood views, as I remember. My question, I think, you've used the term treatment. What exactly is that? And I appreciate Director Miller's question about the beetle, because that was going to be a follow-up, but you've already addressed that. So when you say treatment, what is the treatment that you're describing?
Yeah, excellent question. So let me just talk about the floods first. I mean, the flood effects in Yuba County are devastating. We've been impacted in my lifetime, in color TV lifetime, 1986 and 1997 floods, which many people died in Yuba County, and we haven't overcome the economic impacts of that. And that's what we're working towards. That's what Yuba Water Agency is working towards. So it's difficult at times, and I'm glad you brought up floods. It's difficult at times, especially when we're in drought, to focus on investments in floods. But the last couple of weeks helps us remember that that's a thing in Northern California. We need to invest in it. And hopefully we don't, I hate to say this, but hopefully we don't get major storms in the next couple of weeks. It's kind of looking like we could. But we're ready to manage our infrastructure and operations for flood risk reduction. So thanks for that question. Secondly, what is a treatment? What is forest restoration? What is a healthy forest? What is sustainable forestry or ecological forestry? In my mind, it's all the same thing. It's returning the forest to a condition they were in pre-settlement, or what I say, pre-1850. That's what we're looking to do. Well, how do you do that? You're basically just reducing the amount of vegetation per acre. You could do it unscientifically and randomly by giving every piece of vegetation, every stem out there, a random number and say, we need to reduce it by 30% and pick 3 out of 10 and just cut them out. Well, how do you actually do that? It depends on the site, it depends on the vegetation, but it consists of just conventional timber harvesting, things we've been doing for 150 years. Some of the forests just need to be thinned with conventional timber harvesting, but that isn't removing every tree from an acre. Like, it's not industrial forestry. It's removing a certain percentage, and you selectively remove the trees that are suppressed or damaged or have issues. But there's also prescribed fire. There's hand thinning and burning. There's pile and burning. There's machine pile and burning. There's masticating. Masticating is basically a big tractor that just grinds the vegetation on site. Some of the material is chipped and left on site. Some of it is piled and burned on site. Some of it is chipped on the site and hauled to a bioenergy facility. All different combinations of everything that I just kind of gave a very broad overview of is what treatment is. It's really just reducing the amount of vegetation per acre, striving for a pre-1950s condition. And when I went to forestry school, we had forest resource management and we had industrial forestry. We didn't have a forest ecology degree, which I know they have now, but forest ecology is a thing. There's someone that could stand up here and give you an easy hour-long demonstration of what ecological forestry is.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Go to Director Erdman.
Thank you for a great presentation. I have 2 questions. Number one, with such a 300,000 plus acres, how do you know where to begin? And then number 2, how do you feel about forecast-informed reservoir operations, if you've had any experience in that area? Thank you.
It's like I planted these flood questions with you guys. This is great. Okay, how did we know where to begin? So in one of those meetings I was talking about, where I'm going to use the North Yuba Forest Partnership as an example, I think I said at the end of one of the meetings where we started talking about where do we go first, or do we do the ridge tops, do we do around the urban areas, do we do the right adjacent to the creeks and rivers, power lines, roads, where do we go? And I said, it doesn't matter. You just need to go build momentum and do something somewhere. That's what we need to do. We need to think at a large scale, and we need to go do some stuff, and then we'll worry about the exact perfect way to do it later. Really, I said that because the Forest Service had and here again, we're talking primarily Forest Service at our watershed, I have to back up and say there is not a one solution for every watershed. It just so happens it's easy to get large-scale work done in our watershed because the Forest Service owns and operates most of the land. If you go to other parts of the Sierra, it's industrial timber ownership or small, family timber ownership with some interspersed Forest Service areas. But the reality is we just started pulling their projects off the shelf. They had projects that were environmentally ready to be completed. So why mess around and say, is that one, the absolute first one we should do? Doesn't matter. It's ready to go. Let's go get something started, right? Then we got together, and I don't know the acronyms and the descriptors of all these things, but there's this GIS-based prioritization program that we worked on, that we developed, that is now used throughout the state. But we developed it in the North Yuba Forest Partnership Program, and you put the parameters in, like ecological parameters, the vegetation conditions, slope, access, recreation, urban areas, and it basically spits out, with lack of better terms, the resulting prioritization levels. Then you put the human lens on it and say, okay, does that really make sense? But that was developed a year or two after we kicked the whole project off and we actually started doing work on the ground, which proved our point that we need to go build momentum and start something, and then we'll kind of refine the direction later. And you got to remember, we're thinking about doing this over a 20-year time scale. So we have time, you don't have time to start. You got to start and get something going, but you have time to refine it as you go. You have 2 decades.
Is tons per acre one of the metrics that you use?
Yes, it's totally, that's an absolutely valid metric. It all depends on what the holding capacity of the site is, just like farming. But tons per acre is a metric you could use. You could use volume per acre, trees per acre, vegetation per acre. But yeah, that works.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And then back to your FIRO question, forecast informed reservoir operations. That was, what do I think of it was the question, right? Well, I think it's absolutely going to be a helpful tool. I think it's something we're investing heavily in, and I think that the result of that work is probably going to be utilized, probably was utilized last week and will be in the next couple weeks, simply because we're unofficially operating to that type of an operation now. We don't have protocols and procedures finalized with the Army Corps of Engineers or even DWR at Orville, but we have the concept of forecast-informed reservoir operation in our minds, and we're operating that way, just basing our decisions on forecasts, and we're working on developing the updated protocols and procedures through primarily our water control manual with the Army Corps of Engineers. That's the 50-year-old document that says this is how you're supposed to operate the 170,000 acre feet of dedicated flood storage at your reservoir. Well, in the last 50 years, we've learned a lot about forecasts and our changing climate and what our skills and abilities are with just operating to that protocol. And we're working on updating that so we can implement forecast-informed reservoir operations. That's the software side of the thing. The hardware side is a project we're working on called our ARC Spillway, Atmospheric River Control Spillway, where we are proposing to build a spillway that's 31 feet lower in elevation than our existing spillway so that we can pre-release flood flows and basically create about 200,000 acre feet of additional flood storage in New Bullard's Bar by being able to pre-release during anticipated forecasted flood flows. So we support FIRO, to answer your question.
Thank you.
I know, Tracy, I'm going long here, but these are great questions.
No, no, this is incredibly helpful, and thank you so much for sharing your experience, your knowledge with us. I saw that we did have some directors have their hand up on online, but I think they may have put them down, so we'll go ahead and call on Devin.
Thank you, Chair Quinn. Willie, I just wanted to thank you for coming down here. You had, from a very early stage, said you wanted to be here physically with us to connect with the board, and I know the board really appreciated that. But everyone, you heard that his district may be within a week away of flood control operations. You're braving the storms to get down here, so all the more kudos to you for being here. We really appreciate it. You are executing on a watershed management plan that really sets the stage for some of the discussions that we'd like to bring to this committee in the near future about Metropolitan's thinking about upper watersheds. And so it's super informative, and wanted to really acknowledge the leadership that your agency has taken with the Lower Yuba Accord. And frankly, a structure with variable water amounts based on the year types, variable pricing, but flexibility that has worked really, really well for 15 years, and we look forward to continuing to work with you on all of these subjects going forward. Thank you, Willie.
Excellent, Devin. Thank you. And, both topics I talked about today, a little bit on the Yuba Accord and forest restoration, the word collaboration or collaborative, comes up all the time. And I say that's how we're going to solve our resource management issues. And how can we collaborate? I mean, no offense to the folks that are here in the hybrid world, but it's much easier to collaborate in person and meeting you all. And, that's why I'm here. So thank you.
Well, before we let you go, we have one more question in the room. Director Cordero.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to also reiterate and thank you for being here today. For me personally, it just puts more knowledge on the table in terms of a very important aspect of what makes up our great state. So thank you for that when we make our decisions. I think that's so important. You mentioned a couple of things, a lot of things that piqued my interest, but you mentioned about the fact that historically looking at pre-settlement times is a kind of a barometer and things that we should really consider when we are looking at possible moving forward in management. And you also mentioned the Shingle Springs tribe. Are they working with you on this?
We're working with the Nevada City Rancheria, not the Shingle Springs tribe, but yes, we are working with them directly. They're one of the signatories of our MOU for the North Yuba Forest Partnership, and they participate as much as they have capacity to, and we're trying to assist them to build capacity, but yes, absolutely.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And Willie, thank you very much for your partnership. I know the first time we met a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, we talked about collaboration and watershed, and that's really what we believe in. The solution is just not one single solution. It's about multi-benefits, and I was really impressed with the work you're doing, but also about job creation that you really have led through this program and helping folks really get ready and have jobs. And I want to just let the board know that the partnership on the Yuba Accord, during the driest years, we were able to transfer 20,000 acre-feet of water from you into us to serve us better. So I know that was really a great thing that I want to make sure people know that this collaboration, it's helping us really address the conditions that we're facing. So Willie, I want to thank you for your partnership and appreciate the theme of collaboration, really living that word in everything you do, and look forward to partnering with you more. Thank you.
I'm here, Adele. Appreciate it. Nice to meet you all.